Welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Stay informed with quick, easy-to-listen summaries of our latest articles, perfect for when you're on the go. No reading required. Subscribe for free at mercola.com for the latest health insights.
Hello, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, and today we're examining how ultra-processed foods are dismantling cardiovascular and overall health. With me is Alara Sky, who will guide us through the latest research linking these products to heart disease, cognitive decline, and premature death.
Thanks, Ethan. Ultra-processed foods now dominate grocery shelves. Think frozen dinners, deli meats, packaged snacks, and sugary or diet drinks. Research shows they're responsible for nearly 4 in 10 cardiovascular deaths in Canada and contribute to a spectrum of metabolic, neurologic, and inflammatory disorders that shorten lifespan.
Let's start with the Canadian analysis commissioned by the Heart and Stroke Foundation. It found that 38% of cardiovascular deaths, 17,400 people annually, are attributable to ultra-processed food consumption. Can you walk us through how the researchers arrived at those numbers?
Certainly. Scientists at the University of Montreal merged national dietary survey data with validated risk models. In 2019 alone, they estimated 96,000 new heart disease cases and nearly 389,000 years of life lost or lived with disability due to these foods. The methodology relied on actual intake records, not projections, giving the findings substantial weight.
The study also identified demographic patterns. Which groups experienced the greatest burden?
Young men aged 20 to 24 consumed the highest proportion of ultra-processed foods, and men overall accounted for 61% of new heart disease and stroke cases and 52% of related deaths. The damage begins early. Poor eating habits in youth set the stage for hypertension, endothelial dysfunction, and thrombotic risk decades later.
Listeners may wonder what makes these products so destructive. Mechanistically, how do ultra-processed foods drive cardiovascular pathology?
They're engineered with refined sugars, industrial seed oils, trans fats, and synthetic additives that override satiety signals, promote overeating, and spark chronic inflammation. Repeated spikes in glucose and insulin injure arterial linings, while oxidized lipids accelerate plaque formation. Even a single daily serving raises obesity risk by 7% and type 2 diabetes risk by 12%.
Cardiovascular outcomes are only part of the story. Another study in neurology linked ultra-processed foods to cognitive decline and stroke. What were its main findings?
Using regards data from over 14,000 cognitively intact adults and more than 20,000 stroke-free adults, researchers observed that every 10% increase in ultra-processed caloric intake raised the risk of cognitive impairment by 16% and stroke by 8%. The association was especially strong among Black participants, underscoring disparities in diet-related brain health.
How did the investigators measure cognitive change over time?
Participants completed serial memory and verbal fluency tests from 2003 through 2017. Those in the highest quartile of ultra-processed consumption showed steeper declines in word recall and executive function, whereas individuals favoring whole foods, fresh produce, minimally processed proteins, and healthy fats maintained sharper cognition throughout follow-up.
The senior author, Dr. W. Taylor Kimberly, emphasized that replacing even 1 or 2 ultra-processed meals a week can make a difference. Does the data truly support such modest swaps?
Yes. The dose-response curves suggest nonlinear benefits. Small reductions in ultra-processed intake yield measurable drops in vascular and neurologic risk. That's an encouraging message. Substituting home-cooked meals for fast food lunches twice weekly can tilt biomarkers toward healthier trajectories.
Moving to mortality, a long-term BMJ cohort analysis followed 74,000 women and 40,000 men for up to 34 years. What did it reveal about all-cause death?
Participants in the top quartile of ultra-processed intake had a 4% higher risk of dying from any cause versus the lowest quartile, seemingly modest until you scale it to population levels. Processed meat products were the worst offenders, inflating neurodegenerative death risk by 43% and overall mortality by 13%.
Many people switch from sugary sodas to diet versions, believing they're safer. How did artificially sweetened beverages fare in that study?
Both sugar-sweetened and artificially sweetened drinks were harmful, with hazard ratios of 1.09 and 1.08, respectively. Non-nutritive sweeteners still disrupt insulin signaling, alter gut microbiota, and perpetuate cravings, undermining metabolic health despite containing few or no calories.
A recent umbrella review synthesized 45 pooled analyses encompassing nearly 10 million individuals. Summarize the headline risks identified there.
The review linked ultra-processed foods to 32 adverse outcomes, including respiratory, digestive, metabolic, and mental health disorders. A 10% increase in ultra-processed intake raised type 2 diabetes risk by 12% and cardiovascular mortality by 50%. Adults aged 30 to 50 were most vulnerable, but detrimental effects extended across the lifespan.
Mental health impacts are often overlooked. What did that review report regarding anxiety and depression?
Higher ultra-processed consumption correlated with a 48% greater likelihood of anxiety and a 53% higher risk of depression. Additives, such as emulsifiers and artificial sweeteners, disturb the gut-brain axis, triggering systemic inflammation that affects neurotransmitter balance and sleep quality.
Some listeners might think a single snack can't matter. How did the data quantify incremental harm?
Each additional serving per day increased general obesity risk by up to 7%, abdominal obesity by 5%, and diabetes by 12%. These are compounding risks. Habitual small indulgences translate into significant metabolic strain over years.
Let's shift to solutions. What immediate steps can individuals take to purge ultra-processed foods from their routines?
First, audit your kitchen and discard packaged snacks, refined cereal bars, deli meats, frozen entrees, and sweetened or diet drinks. Second, anchor meals around whole foods, pastured eggs, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, vegetables, fruits, and, if tolerated, white rice or root vegetables. Third, replace sodas with water infused with citrus or berries.
Preparation appears crucial for adherence. How can listeners plan effectively?
Batch cook proteins, pre-cut vegetables, and keep portable options, hard-boiled eggs, nuts, fresh fruit, on hand. Travelers should pack meals to avoid airport or convenience store traps. Finally, monitor daily energy, mood, and cognitive clarity for 30 days. Objective improvement reinforces the lifestyle shift.
To recap, ultra-processed foods fuel nearly 40% of cardiovascular deaths in Canada, heighten cognitive decline by 16%, and elevate overall mortality, especially through processed meats and sugary or diet beverages. Eliminating or sharply reducing these products is non-negotiable for heart, brain, and metabolic resilience.
Exactly. Small, consistent changes, replacing 2 ultra-processed meals a week, cooking with recognizable ingredients, and staying hydrated with unsweetened beverages can recalibrate inflammatory pathways, improve insulin sensitivity, and safeguard long-term health. The evidence is unequivocal. Real food is the most powerful preventive tool we have. Thank you for joining us on Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.